It's The Comedy Store tonight, starring Argus Hamilton. With tonight's guests, Johnny Dark, Jeremiah Watkins. And now, live from the Sunset Strip and the bowels of the world's greatest comedy club, it's The Comedy Store tonight, starring Argus Hamilton.
Thank you all. Thank you for the noise. Thank you. Thank you all. Welcome to the show. Welcome to The Comedy Store tonight. I'm Argus Hamilton. So glad to have you all with us. So glad to have our audience as well. It's a special show, this show. This is the show that asks America one question right now. How many hookers does it take to change a president? It's not two. You know, I'm so glad to be hosting this show because, well, first, NBC offered me basically my first show back in 1980 with my first big development deal after my very first shot on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. So they gave me a bunch of money to develop my show, but they refused to greenlight it. It was called Comedians in Cars Doing Blow. Well, September's coming, and it's that time when college kids are starting to return to campus. You know, for parents, college is like the opposite of kidnapping. You know, give us $100,000. Or we send your kid back. And speaking of school, get this. I could not believe this when I read this. A new research just published, I think yesterday, revealed that only 12% of high school seniors can pass a basic U.S. history exam. It's the lowest percentage since this country was founded in 1922. Now this is weird. A man that was accused of serial dine and dashing has been charged with 10 counts of extortion and grand theft. When he was asked about the charges, he replied, "Excuse me a minute, I need to go to the restroom." Now this is interesting. Just on Monday, Mexico and the United States concluded telephone negotiations, and they entered a new, I guess you'd call it a new transparent trade deal between Mexico and the United States. Trump is being urged by the Senate, though, to make it a three-way deal, including Canada. Trump said, "No problem. You had me at three-way." The telephone conversation took a little longer than expected because Trump refused to press 2 for English. Get this. For the first time in 40 years, a pope has set foot on Irish soil. Coming from a long line of English Protestants, I can say that's close enough. While in this controversial time, Pope Francis in Dublin was guarded by the European Union security team, the Dublin police, the Irish Army, and the Vatican Swiss Guard. It's believed to be the most protection a Catholic has ever used. Yeah, sharp stuff, huh? Oh boy. And this is something. When John McCain died on Saturday, a great hero, the White House flag was lowered as soon as the word came out, but then it was raised again on Monday morning and then lowered again 6 hours later. The flag has been up and down so many times the last 2 days. The flagpole could ejaculate any moment now. Well, Senator McCain asked for a last meal at the hospice, but he got shot down. It's a pattern with him, you know. A Republican, this was funny, this is the truth, I promise you, this is the truth. A Republican candidate for a House seat in Miami told reporters, get this, that the fact that she was once abducted by aliens will not define her. Yes, it will. Finally, this we got to salute. It's kind of an intramural joke, but join in. Louis C.K. returned to the stage this past week, performing a short set at the Cellar in New York City. The club handed out ponchos to everyone on the front row in case it happened to be in the splash zone. Listen, we have a tremendous show tonight, and it's a special, special night. We have the two funniest men, I believe, of their generations on with us tonight. We have the great Johnny Dark, and we have Jeremiah Watkins. We have you. We have comedy. Enjoy the show, folks. Stay tuned. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you so much. Great. Welcome back. Welcome back to the Comedy Store tonight. We've got a terrific show tonight, and this is a personal privilege for me to bring our next guest on. Our first guest tonight. In the last couple of weeks, we've had legends like Steve Bluestein. We've had Tim Thomerson, Tom Dreesen, and these guys were all tremendously powerful in their own way. But there was a guy who was pure funny when I got here. In 1976, he was the one that all the comics gathered in the back of the room to watch because he killed us all. And he's had a tremendous career, and he was nice enough to come down and be on our show tonight. Give it up for Johnny Dark, ladies and gentlemen. Nice to have you here.
Thank you very much.
Nice to have you here.
Thank you very much, guys.
Nice to have you here. Johnny Dark. Johnny Dark, is that your born name?
Oh, no. Johnny Dark is what they call in show business a stage name.
Oh.
My real name is Danny Dark.
Danny Dark.
No, I had to change it. My real name is Coletus.
Coletus.
And all through school, they thought I was a disease. Hey, colitis! Colitis! Come here. So just call me Dark.
Well, man.
Actually, Johnny Dark was a race car driver played by Tony Curtis in the 1955 film Johnny Dark. So when I used to drive a Studebaker Lark, my best friend Fabian would see me and say, "Oh no, here comes Johnny Dark in that hot Lark."
Yeah.
Meaning how square a car it was. So that's how I got the name.
Well, that's an interesting point to bring up, especially for our studio audience, because I know they're well versed in the history of rock and roll.
Yeah.
And there was this period in rock and roll and pop music between about 1957 and before the Beatles got here,
right,
where this Philadelphia, mafia of great performers rule the rock and roll scene, and you were their mascot, their comedian. Let's name some of the
Well, I grew up with Bobby Rydell, who lived in Wildwood, New Jersey, and I was living in Wildwood, New Jersey year-round because my grandmother didn't want to raise us in Philly, so I'd see Bobby, and he was already sharp, and I immediately did an impression of him when he became a famous singer, 'cause I've got one lucky fella, two, I love you true, and I've got 3,000 words I'm saving for. We were good singers. We weren't very smart.
So you had Bobby Rydell,
Fabian,
Fabian, who he scared Sinatra and Dean Martin. He was the one that they always joked about on their monologues.
Right.
They were worried about how big Fabian was going to be.
Well, even Elvis in Germany was very worried. He would worry about Fabian. In 1959, he was signed by 20th Century Fox to do Hound Dog Man, and they actually put him in the same pants and clothes that Elvis wore as Clint, and Fabian was Clint in Hound Dog Man because they were grooming him, 20th Century Fox, to be the new Fabian.
He was an insanely handsome.
Very, very handsome guy.
And then another guy was James Darren, who was the star of Gidget.
Gidget.
And he had the huge hit, There's No Such Thing as the Next Best Thing to Love.
Oh, yeah. He had a lot of hits.
You're still friends with Jimmy, right?
Jimmy and Frankie Avalon, of course.
I wanted you to relay something to James.
Yeah.
Okay? Tell him that you take the smartphone and you copy a song, whatever that's called, and I sent it to the girl I was crazy about. Tell him I said that, and please tell Jimmy that.
And she sent you back. And she sent you back his other hit, "Goodbye, Cruel World."
Yeah, that's right.
That was Bobby's thing. See you later. Goodbye, Cruel World. It's the first. It used to be called Dear John, and it was changed to Dear Argus.
Had she just done that, it would have saved me thousands.
Yeah.
But that was the Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons. I want our show business people to get that this was a Philadelphia mafia of tremendous talent.
Well, Frankie Valli was actually from New Jersey. He was part of the Jersey Boys, and he started with the guys in Newark and stuff, and they came up. But Frankie Avalon, Fabian, Bobby Rydell were all South Philadelphia boys, and I eventually moved back from Wildwood to South Philly, and we lived on 2039 McClellan Street. Now, South Philly was where all the rock and roll stars seemed to be coming out of.
Was that the doo-wop group?
Yeah, the doo-wop groups, and they had the Dovells and all those kind of groups. But Fabian, just because of his so magnificent looks, he made it on his look. And Bob Marcucci, his manager, who also managed Frankie Avalon, would prep the audience by saying, "The fabulous Fabian is coming." That was in Variety. The fabulous Fabian is coming, and then
and you were the mascot.
Well, I was just a friend, and Fabian actually stood by me when I took the oath to go into the Army. I don't know if you saw that story I did on him, but the guy standing next to me was my best friend Fabian.
But you had to be the cut up.
I made everybody laugh. Yeah. I made them all laugh.
And so, how did you wind up at the Comedy Store? Take us through that era.
Well, in 1973 or 74, my wife and I were in Atlanta, Georgia, and I said, well, we can stay in Atlanta, or we can go to New York, or we can go to Los Angeles. Yeah. Now, if we go to New York, we'll starve and freeze to death. But if we go to California, we'll only starve to death. so that's why we came to California. So I'm driving down the street. I'm on my way to the Ye Little Club.
Sunset Boulevard?
On Sunset Boulevard. And I pass the place, and there's this little sign that says The Comedy Store, and a big sign that says Ciro's, Art LeBeau's Ciro's. Yeah. I said, Comedy Store. That was more interesting to me than the Ciro's. So I went to the Ye Little Club in Beverly Hills to sing. And there I
Now, Ye Little Club, I wanted the people to know, in Santa Monica, was this famous?
No, Beverly Hills.
Oh, it was in Beverly Hills.
Ye Little
Club.
That's the Horn. You're thinking of the Horn.
I'm thinking of the Horn. Okay, go ahead.
Ye Little Club is in Santa Monica.
That's where
Joan Rivers
developed all the
out.
material. Yeah.
But also, a lot of great singers would sing. It was a singer showcase, but I went there to sing, and I was sitting in back, and that's the first time I ever saw comics, real comics. And the first comics I ever saw were Falstaff Wilde, who was a gay comic who did a Geraldine, Flip Wilson, and a great Hello, Dolly. Yeah. And then there was Tony Russell, who reminded me very much of Lenny Bruce, not his material, but the way he looked and the way he dressed. Black suit, black tie, white shirt. And then Paul Mooney, incredible, and he was as amazing then as he was to this day. I mean,
always
scary,
prolific.
amazing. Yeah.
He was the heir to Dick Gregory to me.
Yeah, exactly. And then George Miller, our old dear friend George Miller, who also became one of David Letterman's best friends. And I always thought that George reminded me of Herb Schreiner, sort of like a hayseed comic, you know?
George would say things like, I was in the hospital and they gave me Demerol. Yeah. Demerol, that's the drug that makes you actually glad you had the accident. We love George.
Here's a great, I wrote this about George. George Miller, no matter where you're working in the world, George Miller's probably working somewhere in the world too. And inevitably, he will call you to find out and ask, hey, are you bombing too? I only get that call. You wouldn't know if I was bombing.
And for you serious comedy fans, it was at George Miller's wake in the mid-2000s, where all the comics came together over at the Laugh Factory.
That's right.
Everybody to tell stories like this about George Miller, who was David Letterman's very best friend. And it was at that place that the LA Times writer decided to write I'm Dying Up Here, which became the Showtime special.
Yeah, George Miller had that great joke. I said, I hate to take these ladies out because when you take them to dinner, they always have that same old complaint. Well, I want to eat too.
I just hate that.
I just hate that.
So we are at the Comedy Store in the early to mid-'70s, and I get here in early '76. And by the way, when did you ever start doing your impression of Sinatra the singer at the Little Club, the funny one you did?
Yeah, I used to do, when I got the job at the Osmonds, I was on the Donnie Byrne show.
Parenthetically, Sinatra was in his it was about 60 now, and he was starting to crack a little.
Yeah, well, I used to do him doing, you will be my music, you will be my song, you will be my music, or Jilly and the boys will break both your
You did something more dangerous than that. His voice would crack. He would go, you, you. Jilly, get me some water. That could have gotten him killed, I'm telling you.
A long time ago.
I know, man, you were great. Still are. So we're progressing through, and when I get here, you are opening for Ginger Rogers. You're the only comedian at the Comedy Store besides Jimmy Walker and Freddie Prinze who actually has a job.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah,
and so you got picked because of your tremendous talent to open Ginger Rogers.
Yeah, I got a call from, I had gone up to do my first TV show, the Tommy Banks Show, out of the Cave in Vancouver. And I went away, and the next thing I know, I get a call from my manager, you're going to Toronto, you're auditioning for the Ginger Rogers Show. She's firing her magician and her Greek singer. For some reason, they got bad reviews and it didn't work. So I not only needed to do 25 minutes of stand-up, but I needed to do 15 minutes of impressions and then sing 3 songs, the karaoke, Continental, and Change Partners and Dance.
Wow.
So I had all this, and Hal Bourne, Tony Martin's conductor, worked with me for 2 days, and I had a headache in Toronto for 2 days, worried. So I went on, and Ginger would open the show herself, and then she needed to break. So I come out and do 15 minutes. Then 20 minutes later, she needed another break. So I come out and do another 15, 20 minutes. And then I would have to change into costumes to sing all these songs while she and the guys danced. And so it was really.
So you would sing the song while she would do the display dancing.
I would be in a black tuxedo, like with a spotlight and singing, and they would be out dancing, ballroom dancing.
These Cole Porter songs.
Yeah, Cole Porter. And we worked everywhere, the Waldorf Astoria, and everybody in New York came to see us. Mary Lindsay and Barry Manilow. Only one person never came to see us.
Who's that?
Fred Astaire.
Fred Astaire.
What's wrong with you? They didn't get along. Ginger Rogers and Fred Astaire, unfortunately, didn't get along. I guess after all those years of working together, so I never got to meet Fred Astaire. But Ginger gave my wife a shower for my son Dominic at Liberace's house. Liberace loved Ginger Rogers.
Yeah.
And he would throw her a party. Seymour Heller, his manager, was also Ginger Rogers' manager.
Yeah.
So when we came to town, he would throw us a big party at his home.
What was Liberace like?
Oh, he was wonderful.
Yeah.
He enjoyed his success. He loved being famous. He was a great artist, and everybody that knew him loved him. He was a wonderful man.
My earliest memory as a little boy is watching his noontime show on television, playing the piano. He had a 15-minute show on network television.
Yeah.
And there was a mirror on his keyboard, and I always wondered who that was inside playing along with him. I mean it. You're 3 years old. You're going, that synchronization pretty good.
He loved, like Merv Griffin. The thing I loved about Merv was that Merv just loved being Merv Griffin. He loved being himself, even though we considered him and Mike Douglas sort of square compared to Johnny, who was the hippest. But when you look at Merv, he could play piano, jazz. He could play jazz. He could write songs. He could sing. He was a little square. But
your first break was to be on his show, wasn't it?
My first break was at the Westwood Comedy Store. Tom Deason, my buddy, said, Merv's in the audience. Merv's in the audience. So I got up, I did my show. Next thing I know, Friday, I'm at Caesar's Palace doing the Merv Griffin show. And it was wonderful. Him and his son Tony saw me. And there was Wayne Newton. And I wanted to go over and say hello to Wayne Newton, but he was talking to Merv. So I didn't say anything, and I went back and worked on my act. And then I get a tap on my shoulder, and it's Wayne Newton said, what's the matter? You don't say hello to Indians?
What did you say? You said how, didn't you? Well, So we segue from there, and you go on to national television with the Osmonds.
Yeah.
How'd that happen?
The Osmonds came to
the Osmonds had
in the original room. They were auditioning and came down to Michael Keaton and myself, Johnny Dark.
Yeah.
And so we auditioned, and I heard that I got the show. I got the Donnie Marie show, and I don't know whatever happened to Michael Keaton.
Poor guy.
Michael, of course, is a huge star.
Michael, but a lot of people don't know that Michael did stand up.
Yes, he did.
And Johnny and I know he was up there like with Robin and Johnny Dark. He was brutally funny.
Yeah.
And the moment he got his first sitcom, he stopped doing stand-up.
Well, actually, it was the movie Night Shift that broke him. He got the series. He had the Mary Tyler. After I got the Donnie Marie show, David Letterman and Michael got the Mary Tyler Moore variety show. Of course, that didn't work. But then he did Night Shift for Ron Howard, and everybody's talking, oh, Henry Winkler, he's in Night Shift. But the breakout was, of course,
Michael Keaton.
And then Michael Keaton's real name is not Michael Keaton.
It's Douglas.
It's Mike Douglas. And he couldn't use Mike Douglas, and he couldn't use Michael Douglas, so he loved Buster Keaton, so he took that name.
Yeah, he came out of Children's Theater in Pittsburgh.
Oh, there you go.
And so he was very versatile, and women went nuts over him.
Now, the first time I ever saw David Letterman, I know you guys would be interested. David Letterman was on this stage. Oh, I think my mic is off, but anyway, can you hear me?
Yeah.
So David Letterman was on the stage doing this.
This?
Yeah, just doing this. And I said, what's he doing? And he said, so, what do you puds want to talk about tonight? Puds. I never heard the word puds. Spuds, potatoes. But he tapped me on the shoulder right out front in the Comedy Store, and he said, Mr. Dark. He called
you Mr. Dark.
And he said, I'm David Letterman, and I want to be a comedian.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you wind up ever doing his show on late night?
Yeah, I did his show twice on late night, and then I did about 100 Johnny Dark, the oldest CBS page.
Yeah.
I was he wrote a character, and we all got together and wrote. I told him, the writers, I didn't want to play an old man that's been there 37. I'd rather play Sergeant Bilko. Sergeant Bilko was somebody that's been around for a long time, and he's not. And if he's been around a long time, he's not working. He knows what's going on. So consequently, that's the character I played.
Right.
Yeah.
So from what year to what year were you on the Letterman show?
Oh my gosh, it was from about 9 years ago for 4 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I call my car the David Letterman car.
Yeah. Well, did you move to New York or?
No. He flew me back twice a month.
Yeah.
Yeah. I stayed out here. He flew me back, put me up to Riga Royal Hotel.
Yeah.
And a couple other hotels. Yeah.
Well, when you sort of graduated, when the Osmonds, which were a huge show on ABC in the late '70s, you went on to opening for huge acts up and down the line in the '80s in Las Vegas, Tahoe. Yeah. Tell me about that experience.
Well, after being with Donnie Marie and the Osmonds, I did 2 years on their TV show. Then we toured for 5 years, and while we were touring, we worked the MGM Grand Hotel, we worked the Hilton Hotel and the Aladdin, and then I got a gig at Harrah's working for the Righteous Brothers, and Engelbert Humperdinck had fired his whole band working at Reno Tahoe, the Reno Sahara.
Yeah.
So he came to see the Righteous Brothers and saw me, and the next thing I know, I get a call from Bill Medley. Johnny, come on down to the dressing room. Engelbert wants to meet you.
Wow.
I spent 5 years on the road with Engelbert.
Wow, and he was a huge draw.
Oh my God, him and Tom Jones were the two biggest acts in the country at that time.
Yeah, at that time.
Yeah.
And so, let's say it goes into the '90s now. What happens then?
Well, after Engelbert, I did the Growing Pains. I had a lot of years on Growing Pains. I did 3 years on Growing Pains to different characters, and they spun me off to a show called Just the 10 of Us, which was about a coach and a football team. And I started out playing a professor, and then wound up being Danny, the owner of the pizza parlor where the girls sang. And we did about 22 shows, and then it was canceled.
Yeah.
And a lot of TV shows, L.A. Law and Equal Justice, and movies and TV and stuff like that.
What was your favorite moment?
Oh, there's been a lot of favorite moments. I think one of the favorite moments was doing Merv from Caesar's Palace. Being at Caesar's Palace when I was on, and so it's interesting because Alan, the great Alan, comedian from New York, I can't think of his name, but he was on, but he wasn't prepared. But for some reason, Alan King.
Yeah.
So he came on and he just did his thing, but it was more conversation and not many laughs. Well, I came on and I killed because I was desperate. I was young and new, and I did my best.
There was all this pent-up laughter, people expecting to laugh at
right.
Alan King.
But
you were a relief.
I was a big relief because I had jokes.
Right.
But
How
anyway,
considerate of you.
To give you an example of a comic, He actually invited me and Betty Bitterman back to the Sands to see his act because he wanted me to see him killed.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because Alan King was murder.
Oh, he was great.
Oh.
Yeah, and a huge star, as you
Yeah.
know.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so you had it to do all over again. What would you do different?
What would I do different? Not much, actually. I mean, I would just do what I can. I've got very lucky. You know, I never became a David Letterman or a Robin Williams, and I worked with so many of them. You know, working with Robin, I used to pick Robin up in front of Chasen's restaurant, and we'd drive out together to Newport Beach to work the Laugh Factory, the Laugh Stop, I mean.
Yeah.
And I was the headliner, Robin was the middle, but he was so
You
blue.
had to follow?
Yeah, and I told the owner, I said, listen, Robin is doing a long time before me, and he's killing it, and I'm just as fascinated with him as you are. Why don't you let me go in the middle?
Yes.
So he doesn't desensitize the audience with blue jokes and risque jokes, and I can do my stand-up for Merv, Mike, and so the owner said it was okay if it was okay with Robin. Well, Robin loved it, so I never told Robin to don't do this or don't. I said, Robin, do whatever you want. And because I knew that there was something amazingly special about Robin. I wasn't quite sure where he could do it, though, because it was so blue, as you remember.
Yep.
Of course, then HBO came along, and then John Byner turned down that Happy Days, which we wanted a Martian, and they wanted John Byner's little voice.
Really?
That he used to do that little voice.
John Byner?
Yeah. And he said, no, I'm tired of doing that little Martian voice. So they got this new guy, Robin Williams. Yeah. And Robin had a tough time getting out of the contract for Laugh-In, you know, because once they did Mork and Mindy, Robin had already signed to do Laugh-In 2.
Yeah.
And he had a very tough time. He was very bitter about that, but he finally got out of
Yeah.
it. And went on to do Mork and Mindy. And I was at the airport with him as they were getting ready to go to Colorado, and he said, we're shooting the exteriors of the movie,
Well, I know a couple things. Robin and I were on the Laugh-In 2 together.
Oh, yeah,
in
that's
the,
right.
In the fall of 77. And NBC was stupid enough to put all this tremendous talent opposite Monday Night Football.
Oh, geez.
Okay. You know, in the fall. Okay. All right. And so it only lasts about 5 or 6 weeks.
Yeah.
So almost a whole troop of us get hired by Paul Mooney and Richard Pryor to do the Richard Pryor specials on NBC. The great Richard Pryor is opening every show with a stand-up monologue. Paul Staff, all Marsha Warfield, all of us, Joey Kamen, all of us were on the show, and they kept it on against Monday Night Football.
Again.
Lasted 5 weeks.
Yeah.
The most tremendous talent in the world, and NBC put it up
I
against
accept
football.
One thing I learned about, you never want to watch Pryor if you have to go on after him. You don't want to watch him. If you do, your self-esteem will be so low that you think you stink even after you watch Pryor, and then you have to go up and follow him. Half the room is leaving. You know, they always would leave. And so I realized the only way I could do that was stay out of the room when Pryor was on, keep my actual attitude going, and then go up and treat it like I was the only comedian on the stage. And you had to do that a lot of times when you follow comics that sometimes desensitize an audience or take them in a different place that you don't want to be. You have to stay focused, as you know, as a comic, especially if you're a headliner. And I learned that from working the comedy. Thanks to Mitchie Shure, by the way, who really believed in me. When I first got here, it was Sammy Shure that owned the Comedy Store along with Rudy DeLuca. And Rudy and DeLuca and Barry Levinston and Craig T. Nelson had that Comedy Store group, which they would do funny marches and stuff. Well, Rudy went on to write for Mel Brooks. Craig T. Nelson, after he got disenchanted with Hollywood, moved to Mount Shasta, and then got the call to do Injustice for All, that scene with Al Pacino, made him a huge star. And then Barry Levinson became a great director.
Well, I'll tell you what kind of guy Johnny Dark was. I know this from talking to Robin when we were young and going crazy and had people to talk about late at night.
Yeah.
He loved you.
Yeah,
and you always took him under your wing. You would have breakfast with him, with him and his girlfriend.
And Valerie, actually his wife. Yeah, a beautiful girl, ballet dancer. Oh, my gosh.
Mitzi loved Valerie,
oh,
too.
she was gorgeous.
But you would see these mercurial headliners come and go. Tremendous talent, but you were always right there in the center, always funny, always gracious, and you stayed healthy.
Thank God.
There's just not one 12-step program you belong in.
Well, I
What's wrong with this comedian?
And I even in the Army, I tried to smoke because everybody was Marlboro or Winston, and I couldn't smoke. I'd get sick. I couldn't inhale. And then I tried weed one time, and it just made me dizzy, and I couldn't. My main Jones was Scotch and water as a singer. I'd have a Scotch and water, and then one day my wife threatened to leave me because she was crying, and I said, "Why are you crying?" She said, "Because if you don't stop drinking, I'm going to leave you. Well, I stopped drinking. And I got lucky because I never needed any help. I just said, oh, I'm done. And I quit drinking. But all my friends.
A woman was that important to you?
Yeah, she was.
Wow.
But my
Explain
friends were
this to
like,
me.
Tom drinks. Well, I'm a heterosexual.
I see.
So,
well,
no,
you know I'm an alcoholic.
well, of course.
My motto is,
how long have I known you?
Yeah, I'll be 32 years sober in November, but nevertheless, alcohol is not the answer. But it was always my first guess.
What a coincidence. I'm 32 years old.
It works right out. I just want you to know, and the public to know, that for all these up and comings and ups and downs, these mercurial, all of us with our isms and all, this is the best liked guy in the business and the funniest guy of his generation, and it's an honor to have you on. Johnny Dark, come back anytime. Love you, man.
Thank you so much. Proud of you. Thank you, guys.
Nice to have you here.
Thank you very much.
Thank
you
so
all
much.
very much out there.
Fantastic.
Oh, I hope so.
Welcome back. Welcome back. The funniest guy in the 70s, Johnny Dark, is now going to get to see the guy I think is the funniest guy of all the millennials. I've seen him develop from the potluck at the Comedy Store in the early part of this particular decade, and it's been amazing watching this guy grow. And he murders them everywhere. You see him on Kill Tony, and you see him on Roast Battle on Comedy Central. You're going to see a lot of him for the rest of your lives, ladies and gentlemen. Jeremiah Watkins. Let him hear.
Oh.
Nice to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Well, you're in town. What are you in town for?
What am I in town for?
Yeah.
Just living here in Los Angeles right now, outside of touring,
Yeah?
Yeah.
Well, what's going on with you? What's going on?
Things are good. We're doing right now tonight is a season finale of Roast Battle on Comedy Central.
Yeah.
Jeff Ross is battling Blake Griffin from the NBA.
Wow.
So yeah, it's a pretty weird combination.
God, I
Yeah.
hate to win that.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, right?
Well, explain your position on that.
So we have an interesting position. Myself, Jamar Neighbors, and Willie Hunter, we are the Wave. And basically, if you haven't seen Roast Battles, two comedians going head-to-head and verbally insulting each other, kind of like a rap battle, but with jokes.
Yeah.
And the Wave, we heighten the reactions of the crowd, and whenever a joke does well, we reward it with something physical or an act out, or doing something with props to accentuate
Like
it
a
and
cheap
heighten
game
it.
show sort of thing?
Pretty much, yeah. Like kind of like the whammies that would come out on. Yeah.
And so you underscore and underline every major feeling and moment.
Yeah. So we make the bombs way worse, and we make we make the highs higher. So yeah.
So that's been going on for a while, hasn't it?
Yeah, this is our third season.
Yeah. And things going well.
Things are good, I guess I just got word they're airing it like in the Midwest and stuff right now.
Really?
And the time zone, it'll air later tonight in LA. But yeah, I did one of the things that Jeff Ross did. Was he did a Bruce Jenner joke tonight.
Really?
Spoiler alert! You'll hear it in a couple hours.
You're going to show this to the Midwest?
Yeah.
To Protestants?
Yeah, I know, right?
Okay, it's dangerous.
But he did a Bruce Jenner joke tonight, and I don't know if you've seen Silence of the Lambs, but I tucked everything between my legs and went full Buffalo Bill tonight. So you're welcome, America. There you go.
Oh my God. So what are some of your favorite moments on the show?
Oh, wow. Some of them have been cut and they never saw the air because they were a little bit too much. The only thing that we that got completely nixed that was during a live show was the season 2 finale. Yeah. And we try to top ourselves, and sometimes it's hard to out crazy yourself whenever you keep going for it, you know. But the second season finale, we did this bit where Willie Hunter was on stage, and I mimed giving him a blowjob on my knees, and I was bobbing, and he was, you know, enjoying it. And then I stood up, and I had a mouthful of white Dove soap, and I just, as soon as I got up, I went, "Blah," and it dropped everywhere. And the censors immediately were like, "This is pornographic. This is disgusting. We cannot ever allow that to be seen again."
East of La Brea.
Yeah, east of La Brea, exactly. But because we crossed the line with that, they ended up airing me shaving my pubic hair on screen. So you win some, you lose some.
That we can go
right?
with. That's acceptable.
Right? Yeah, that's acceptable.
It's called hygiene. We're
right?
hygiene.
Exactly.
So you're a good example as well as a funny man.
Yeah, I try. How's your pubic region doing?
It could use an overhaul.
It could use an overhaul?
Yeah.
We're gonna go get waxes together.
I went with Mitzi for a couple of years. It's really
to waxes.
What's left is what's left. Just happy to be getting a laugh or two now.
Just a sparse desert of cactuses down there.
Didn't affect me at all. Yeah. So talk about Kill Tony.
Yeah, Kill Tony. It's another show that I'm a part of that I'm really excited about. That we do every Monday night out of the Comedy Store. We stream it live. It's available on YouTube and all the podcast platforms. And Tony, along with Red Band, they co-hosted together. They bring on a couple guests to help them kind of be the panel for the show. And open mic comedians put their name in a bucket, and they're randomly drawn out. And then whoever's drawn out, they come up and do 60 seconds on stage, and the panel will either help critique their jokes or maybe bust their balls a little bit if they didn't quite prepare enough. Yeah. And that's super fun, and I'm a part of the band on that, like a late night band. Yeah. And we.
Now this is in front of a full crowd in the main room.
Yeah. Yeah.
With cameras rolling.
Yeah.
Okay.
And basically every week, what we do for the band, myself, Joel Jimenez, and Chris Dillon, we will commit to different characters every single week. So we will come out as different things. Like this week we were pregnant women. Last week we were the cast of Back to the Future. So I played Christopher Lloyd, and Joel played Marty McFly, Michael J. Fox, and we do different things. Italian mob bosses some weeks. One week we were white trash. We do it all.
Yeah. So when I saw you starting out, like in about 2012, 2013, on open mic night, I saw you able to do so many things on stage, physically, act-wise, one-liners, and everything. You can do so much. How do you determine what you're going to put in a single act each night?
I kind of I gauge it a lot on what the audience is kind of grooving with, Yeah. Like sometimes for longer sets, I have to sit down and kind of really prepare, what the set list is going to be. But a lot of times I throw out what the order is going to be based on maybe how an audience member is receiving something, maybe if somebody's being rowdy over here. Like I like to kind of create in the moment and kind of play off of the beats of the room.
Jeremiah is so adept. He can lie down on his back on stage and have some routines, right down on his back and just murder the crowd 2-3 minutes at a time. I remember this stuff. You're phenomenal.
Oh, thank you.
Do you still do that?
Unfortunately, I do a lot. I do a lot of weird stuff on stage, and I'm like, oh yeah, I did that. Yeah.
Did I remind you to use it when the crowd's dead or something? Because it's funny.
Yeah, no, I still do. I try to do a lot of.
You and your girlfriend in bed or something like that.
Yeah, I'm sure I did. Yeah, okay, yeah, I know her. Yeah, I still do that bit occasionally. I try to constantly write new physical bits that just kind of paint a weird picture on stage, just so you don't see, because an audience gets used to, whenever in the original room it's back-to-back comics every 15 minutes.
Yeah.
They're sometimes used to just seeing a comic, maybe just stand in place or keep the mic in the stand. But if I can create weird, tableaus on stage,
you can go all over the place.
Yeah, then it's to make it a little bit interesting. And if they don't like me, they'll at least remember it.
Yeah. well, growing up, was Jim Carrey an influence on you?
Absolutely.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, absolutely. He was a big influence. Steve Martin, Chris Farley. That's what I consider like the pillars of physical comedy for me growing up. I loved those guys and consumed everything about them that I could, and learned as much about them that I could. Because
whenever I see a lot of Jim Carrey once he was set free from his little impression prison. Remember?
Right. Yeah.
He used to do impressions.
Yeah.
And he was imprisoned in that. Mm-hmm. And one night he's partying late with Sam Kinison, and Kinison says, "Be yourself up there, man. That's the funny one we like to see."
Yeah.
And that unleashed him. And I think that's what you saw, and that's what you adapted.
Oh, well, that's very cool of you to say.
Well, you got the right. Listen, you all are going to see Jeremiah Watkins, like I said, your entire lives. This is a catch we got for him to get him here tonight, and I'm so glad we have him. Give it up for Jeremiah Watkins. You are sensational. Thanks for being on.
Love you, buddy. Thank you.
Come back anytime.
All right.
Well, that's our show for tonight. But I'm telling you, I'm so glad. How about a hand for Johnny Dark, ladies and gentlemen, who was on with us tonight? Jeremiah Watkins, tremendous crew, the writers, the production team. We all had a ball tonight. And I want to invite you back next week for another fun-filled session here at the funniest place on this planet, the Comedy Store. Hope you like the show, Mitzi. Love you.